right with this. So Dr. Dan Miller is our speaker tonight. He's copyright specialist and consultant on business aspects of independent publishing. Um, Formerly, he operates as integrated writer services, but more colloquially, he is known as the copyright detective, which I love. He's coming to us tonight from Colorado, where he was previously the board president of our sister organization, SIPA, the Colorado Independent Publishers Association. Prior to finding his way to helping publishers, he worked as telecommunications consultant and executive director for NASA's Classroom of the Future initiative. His start was in technology education, so he's well positioned for this, ultimately earning his education doctorate from Virginia Tech. I was thinking, Dan, your accent wasn't exactly Colorado. So I've seen for myself, I've seen for myself interacting with Dan that he has a detail-oriented mind, which is very important to understand the nuances and yet wade through the legalese and bureaucracy that is the U.S. Copyright Office, all to help us here, mere mortals, to strategize and minimize our risk and liabilities surrounding the use of materials subject to copyright. Dan's really found the zeitgeist of the moment here in trying to understand how the rapidly evolving case law that makes up what we collectively call the copyrights applies when AI tools and generative content are thrown into the mix. So I'm really excited about this. Dan, why don't you take it away?
Okay, I don't have a share button yet, Allison.
You should.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, how are we looking, boys and girls?
We are seeing your whole desktop right now. There you go. Now you're full screen.
Okay, I'm trying to, let me position the view. It's not letting me change anything. Okay, it is what it is. So I'm not seeing very much of the audience. Usually I actually kind of heckle the audience when I'm seeing what they're doing on the little screens over there when I'm presenting, but not so much tonight. So
well, before you get rolling, Dan, do you want questions during, or do you want to just kind of steamroll through and we'll do questions at the end?
Let me go through because I'm going to answer a lot of the questions as we go through, and some things you're not going to know you have a question until we get to the end anyway. And then I'm going to uncover a lot of stuff, and there's going to be a lot of questions. So it's going to be a spirited discussion.
So you're guaranteeing we'll have more questions by the time you're done, huh?
We will have a lot more questions for that.
All right.
And so I'm also recording this as a backup. So let me, I need to give some backstory to this whole thing. This is the third time that I've made this presentation, and I've really had to tweak it each time because of changes that are taking place. So this whole area of copyright and artificial intelligence is very much a fast-moving target. And I even revised this presentation 2 hours ago. I didn't do I told Paul earlier, I did not watch the news for 48 hours, so I would not have to make a major revision to the presentation. But anyway, I'm going to pause just for a minute, Allison, and then I'll actually start the jargon. So I'll give you about a 5-second break and then I'll launch in. So I am very happy to be here tonight and to talk about AI and copyright. It's a very complex subject, and this presentation that I'm making tonight actually has turned out to be a case study in the use of artificial intelligence in something that's being submitted for copyright registration. Because I have submitted this presentation, it is in the process of being reviewed by the U.S. Copyright Office, and that has very much informed this presentation that I'm doing tonight. I am finally starting to see the big picture and the little picture at the same time, and hopefully the information that I'm going to share with you tonight is going to be on target. Now, tomorrow it may change. So if we're doing another presentation later on, there's going to be a new version. This is version 3.0. So the next one will be another iteration of that. But there is if you'll notice the bottom of the screen, there is a copyright notification. This entire presentation is run through the filter of copyright. So even though I'm talking about artificial intelligence, it's in the relationship with copyright. And my doesn't want to drive. There we go. I'm having to use the mouse now. My little push button doesn't work. First of all, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm sharing what I've learned about copyright and AI. The information in this presentation, I believe it's correct. And the purpose here is to contribute to a new phrase I've picked up, copyright literacy. And that's what we're trying to achieve here is literacy and not expertise by any means. So this is not intended as legal advice. If you need legal advice, talk to an attorney. That's what I do. When I don't understand some aspect of copyright, I have attorneys that I contact. And I've also had attorneys as clients because they didn't deal with copyright and the nitty-gritty of getting permission. This is a little bit of context for this presentation. There is a need for a philosophical discussion about AI and its effects on everything that's taking place. Paul and I have had some sidebars about that in getting ready to tonight's presentation. But this presentation is not that. I'm presenting as best I understand the facts associated with how AI and copyright interface. So this is an examination of possibilities and challenges. Let me acknowledge that I used AI, and I'm going to show you in great detail how I used AI in preparing this presentation. So these are the 4 platforms that I used. Google AI, which anytime you do a Google search, or a lot of times when you do a Google search, you're going to see a Google AI response. ChatGPT, Perplexity is my go-to AI platform, and I use Canva for 1 or 2 of the images that are in here. Here is a key concept to grasp. There are 2 aspects. Think of them as forks in the road. One of them is called AI generated content, and the other is AI assisted content. This makes all the difference in the world between what's going to be copyrightable and what is maybe not going to be copyrightable. AI generated content generally is not copyrightable. And I'm going to flag these as we go through the presentation. Each and every slide has notations about either AI generated or AI assisted content. I'm trying to drive home this point. This has taken me 4 months to get this through my thick skull. And when it finally did, it was one of those aha epiphany moments, if you will. The other one is AI assisted content, and that's what may be copyrightable. And that's what's going to be copyrightable in this PowerPoint presentation. In the upper right-hand side of your screen, you'll see an image that I actually had created by ChatGPT, and that is an AI-generated image. It is not copyrightable. There was very little human involvement in that. I simply typed in a prompt and it spit that out. And I'm going to demonstrate that several places throughout. In the last one, the copyright assisted content, copyrightability is determined on a case-by-case basis, and the U.S. Copyright Office is reinforcing that daily. It's based on the amount of human contributions that were made rather than just purely the machine-driven inputs. But there has to be human involvement in terms of making the final output. Here are ways that I actually used AI in creating this presentation. First of all, it helped me find the template, the blue background that you see in here. I did an AI query and it gave me a number of PowerPoint backgrounds that might be appropriate. I don't know why it's wanting to do that tonight. Outlines for the presentation. Initially, I think gave me like 10 slides. Well, I think I have 54 in here now, and I've had to cut about 10 of them out as we go along. But it did do some initial outlines. First of all, I wanted to see what it would do. It created the description of the presentation that's actually posted on your website. I found it very accurate, and I said, well, why not use that? And that actually demonstrates uh, something that was AI generated. So my description of this presentation is not copyrightable. The topics for the slides, I do a lot of research using AI. Content for the slides, you'll see a lot of content that AI assisted me in presenting that. Artwork, you're going to see a lot of that. And then fact checking. I found it very useful. In the old days, I used to Google everything. Now I simply hit the Perplexity AI platform and start from that point of view. I actually have some objectives, and maybe these are my objectives. I hope your objectives, but this is what I'm hoping to accomplish. I'm hoping that participants will be able to make more informed or better informed decisions before using either AI generated or AI assisted content in their works. I would like for you to know what you're getting into before you head down the path, either of those two paths. And I also hope that you will be able to identify how different uses of AI impact the copyrightability of the works that you publish or create. This is divided up into 3 areas. I found out from the first presentation that I needed to go back in and put some copyright basics. I need to provide more context to see how AI is impacting all of this. So I'm going to talk about copyright basics and AI basics. Then I'll talk about the intersection of AI and copyright. And then lastly, we'll have a conversation about AI's impacts on some of the creative industries. So part 1, copyright law. So copyright law grants exclusive rights to the owner of the copyrighted work. So it gives you a monopoly, not only during your lifetime, but if you do that today, it's 75 years after you pass. So it gives you exclusive rights, and that includes the rights to reproduce the copies of it, to make derivatives. And derivatives is a key concept. I'll come back to derivatives as we go through. To distribute copies to the public. Now, in this case, this presentation is being recorded, and I have given the association the right to distribute a copy of this presentation. So as a copyright holder, I have conveyed the right to this organization to distribute a copy to the public. And in doing that, it makes this a published presentation. Publicly perform the work, that's another one of the rights. I've recently run into that with a client who is doing podcasts. So the podcast will feature poems. So the poem is a written work, but the podcast turns it into a verbal presentation, a public dramatic presentation, if you will. Then perform publicly as an artworks. Maybe I take one of my creations and I want to hang it in a gallery somewhere, print it off of an AI platform. And then the last is to transmit digital sound recordings. So this presentation also has that, a digital sound recording. So all those rights belong to the copyright holder. Now, what's copyright infringement? Well, that occurs when any of those rights are violated. And this is a key component to this whole discussion is a lot of people will consider AI generated outputs to be derivative works of copyrighted content that's out there. And that's the heart of a lot of discussion and the heart of a lot of copyright cases that are out there. How do you exercise your rights? This is a relatively recent rule by the U.S. Copyright Office. Copyright owners must obtain a copyright registration certificate before they can file a copyright claim. So if you violate my rights and I have a copyright on here, but I don't have it registered, I have to wait until it's registered until I can file a claim against you. So it's very important that once a work is created, and the copyright examiner who actually talked with me brought out the 90-day concept for that. You should do this within 90 days of something becoming published to maintain your rights. There are some exceptions, but I won't get into those. Fair use. This hits me weekly. I get inquiries. I've done X, Y, Z. Surely that's fair use. Well, the problem is fair use really is used as a defense in a court of law when somebody's been sued. So it's actually defined as allowances to the limited use of copyright. And typically it's for things like commentary, criticism, news reporting, scholarly reports. It's not for your do-it-yourself manual or for your novel or for whatever else you want to create. And it's taking a risk that you will have to weigh yourself whether you want to even think about claiming fair use for using a quote that's under copyright protection in your own work. Still today, courts are weighing four factors for that, and these are going to be coming into play very heavily in the lawsuits that are already in place against AI platforms that are using other people's content to train their platforms. So the purpose first is the purpose and the character of the use. And I've got an asterisk by there. I think this audience will probably remember in 2015 when Google won the lawsuit that allowed them to digitize millions of copies of books and put them into a searchable database without getting permission from anyone. And they won the lawsuit. It was Authors Guild brought them to court. But the courts decided that that actually was a fair use because the database was transformative. So that's a key concept about fair use. And again, the courts decided that. The nature of the copyrighted work. If I quote your poem, put your whole poem in a book, it may only be 200 words, but it's the entire poem. So that has to do with kind of the nature of it. And that goes to the next one, the amount and substantiality of what is being taken from someone. And the last one is the effect on the market. And there's actually a court case that was just decided, and it's one of the first AI cases to be decided. The asterisk at the bottom, it's a Reuters versus Ross, and it was decided in February, just a few weeks ago. The court rejected a fair use claim by the AI platform. In this case, it's pretty clear. The AI platform actually scraped all the news information from Reuters and was trying to come up with a competitive business. So it really got at this last one about the effect on the market. Now, the court cases were sufficient that it actually drove Ross Intelligence out of business. So they are a bankrupt, non-existent company now, but the court still continued and ruled against them. Public domain. This is my favorite chart. I use this with every client that I get because you have to figure out when a copyrighted work went into the public domain if it was ever actually copyrighted. So I refer to this often. So this is one of the charts that you may look for. It's also available. Cornell has it, and that's where I pick it up. Right now, there's a moving target. So things before 1929 in the United States are in the public domain. After that, it's muddy. You have to look at the conditions in terms of whether it's in public domain. But if an AI platform scrapes things that are in the public domain and uses it, that's fair game, as is it for you. You can take a fair anything in the public domain and use that as well. Now, what does generative AI do? Well, it creates content. There's all kinds of AI, but I'm only talking about generative AI because it creates content. All this other things, all the other kinds of AI platforms, I'm not getting into at all because they're not relevant to publishing at this point in time, or at least as far as I understand. Well, text, obviously, that's the first thing that we talk about. Images, you'll see a lot of those. Audio, a presentation I sat in Saturday, a person was generating the voices of people who are deceased. Marilyn Monroe, he had an interview with Marilyn Monroe, and the AI platform reproduced the voice of Marilyn Monroe. There is a whole guide that I'll show you in a minute that deals with that issue. Video production, they actually produce video, and then computer code, and that's one place where AI really excels, as I understand it. Here are some possible uses in AI, some of which will not get you into trouble, some of which may. Brainstorming and generating ideas. That's a really good way to use that, is to help it think outside the box, if you will, or maybe it's thinking inside the server. Research and fact checking, I use that daily. Generating drafts, summaries, and outlines is another way that you could use AI. Make content more engaging, the audience targeting. That really gets into the writing skills, and I don't deal with the writing aspect of that, but writing coaches and everything else, that's an area that they're getting into. And the presentation I attended Saturday was all about that. Marketing strategies. You produce marketing materials using AI. You're not going to copyright it. You don't have to worry about whether it's AI generated or AI assisted because you're not worrying about getting a copyright. And then editing of all different kinds. Lastly, it might suggest social media strategies and content that you could use on social media. If you're not worried about copywriting what you're putting out on social media, that's not an issue for you. All right, this is the hard part to explain. How does this work? If you don't understand it, it may as well be magic. Well, I'm trying to see if I can remove some of the magic from this, but I have to admit, a lot of it's still magic to me as well. The first piece of this is the training phase, and that's the next big issue that's coming out of the U.S. Copyright Office, is the whole idea about training. All right, so what happens is they gather massive data sets. For example, everything on the internet has been scraped. So these data sets are managed in server farms. And one of the things I heard recently, I think it was 6 Mile Island, they were talking about reopening the nuclear power plant to provide enough power to serve a server farm for AI. So if you think about it, these things take huge amounts of energy and cooling to operate, but it's massive data sets. And then they clean, format, and pre-process that data. And that's where the magic starts for me, is I don't quite understand how that does. Mentally, my concept is they feed everything into a great big wood chipper, and then it all comes out the other end and somehow gets categorized. But I'm clueless in terms of how the algorithms do that. So for me, that's still magic right now. Then they analyze those and are looking for patterns, distributions, relationships, and structures. And I've got a couple of images that I created where I'll try to put a handle on that a little bit. The training on the text, or where do they get their training data? Books, excerpts, full text. There's one, LibGen, I think, is the one that's the guilty party. I think they have something like 6 million items that have been scanned with or without permission, and people are accessing that. So you have to be very careful about where they're getting their content. Websites, think of every website that exists out there has been scraped, and that information is sitting on servers all over the place, including your blog. If you have a blog out there, it's been digitized and it's sitting in these server farms. And I'm going to talk about websites in just a minute. Social media, okay, your Facebook, fair game, Twitter, all those kind of things. Again, it's sitting on the internet and it's digitized. News articles, that was the one about Reuters versus Ross. The news article, the information is out there. Academic research papers, scientific journals, publications, forums, message boards. One of the things I've learned to do early is that, and the reason why I like Perplexity is it gives you the sources. So I checked the sources, and I was looking for something. I was trying to find the going rate for accountants, and I got the information back, and I looked at the one of the sources, and I don't remember the details, but it's like Bubba's Bait Shop in Biloxi, Mississippi, a chat group that they had. Well, I don't want to make any decisions about paying an accountant based on a chat group with Bubba's Bait Shop down in Biloxi. So consider the source as you go through. Always consider the source, as you should consider the source of tonight's presentation. And then public domain, again, millions of documents out there in the public domain, and all that's been pulled into these platforms. Now, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see I have a little note there. AI assisted by Perplexity AI. So Perplexity helped me identify those topics, if you will, and helped me do the fact checking and all that. So in terms of copyrightability, I'll have to wait and see if the Copyright Office decides that is copyrightable or not. And they will make that decision on a case-by-case basis. Here's a website example that's up close and personal. So I went into Perplexity and I typed in, you see where the arrow is, write content for a homepage describing copyright clearance, consulting, and services. I was trying to find out who the competition was. Well, there I am. So in the first 4 items that they cited is my website. And you can see descriptions down below. But then there are the sources. So out of the top 5, we had 3, our web pages had 3 of the top 5 positions. Now, considering, how do I feel about it? Considering that every website in the world has been scraped and I show up in the top 3 on that query, I felt pretty good about that. You know, I've got some exposure, I got some visibility. Had they actually quoted our website though, I don't think I'd have felt quite as happy. So I did check, and they did not quote anything that appears on our website. I like the output so much that I actually modified the format of our website now with bullet points because that's how they summarize the search on my website. Training on image data. All right, where do they get all the images? Web crawling. Think of this. Any image that's ever been put on the internet is captured somewhere by someone. Every image, your vacation in Florida, whatever, has been captured. User-generated Getty Images is using its own services to train its own platform, if you will. Things like Adobe. Adobe was mentioned earlier, I think maybe in the chat before the session. Adobe stock images, Adobe Firefly is using Adobe stock to train its own AI platform. Public domain, Library of Congress has millions of images. And one of the ones, Getty Images has a lot of images that are actually from the Library of Congress. Creative Commons. If you put it in Creative Commons, put it in Wikimedia. If you think about all the images that are in Wikimedia, all those have been captured. And then open licenses, which a couple of things like Unsplash and the other one that's listed in there. And that's just a few of the sources that are out there. Now, again, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that all this list was assisted by both ChatGPT and Perplexity. This one's a fun one. So I put in a simple little prompt, and I'm going to talk about prompts quite a bit because that's your interface with the AI platform. I simply typed in, give me a picture of Vermont apple cider donuts. And that's what ChatGPT created. Now, I can't tell, does that look like a photograph to you? Well, there's some things that you can pick up. So if you look at the prompt words, I put in picture, okay, it's a picture, Vermont, and I'm guessing the leaves are there representing Vermont maybe. Apple cider, so there's apples, and then there's a glass of cider, and then there's donuts. So if you think about how many pictures of apples are there out there on the internet, there's got to be gazillions of them. And somehow Chat went out and it grabbed 4 apples in a little basket full. Now, one thing I noticed peculiar in this, and you'll find lots of oddities in AI generated images. I've had people say they did something and the person had 3 arms. And I'll show one in just a minute where it puts in some strange things. But I noticed that it was a small, medium, and large apple, and they all seem to be of different varieties. But the apple slice in the bottom right-hand corner of that drawing looks like a graphic to me rather than a sliced apple. So again, that's kind of an unusual thing. And the donuts seem like they're kind of floating in the air. The last thing that's kind of a bogey in that picture is if you look at the jug in the center top, it says Vermont AP Balloon cider donuts. So you can see that it started to type in the word apple and didn't quite get it all there. So if you're generating AI images, you've got to check all the details that are in there and see what it's actually giving you. And then this one, Perplexity does not give you images. So this is a result, though, of that same prompt that I put in there. It gave me a description, but up at the top of that, you'll see there were 4 images, and there were a lot more, but I blanked them out. I blanked them out because I did not want to be guilty of copyright infringement, because they were actually pictures that they pulled off the internet. So if anyone tells you that AI does not capture and use the exact image, that's not correct, because I found that these were exact images, and I actually will ask AI questions about itself. So I asked Perplexity if where those images came from, and then I pull this little quote: "The images typically sourced from the web." So it actually found the photographs that I blacked out, and it fed those actual photographs back to me. And in my interpretation, I think anyone else's interpretation, that's copyright infringement. It used someone else's images without permission. Now, if the images were not copyright protected, then again, the owner chose to do that and not the AI platform itself. How does AI work? Well, this is the second piece. The first was the training part. So you enter a prompt, and I've used a prompt multiple times here already. They're both positive and negative prompts that are out there, and I'll talk about those in pretty good detail. AI generate, and I put it new in quotes, they generate content. And it may be new, it's different, it's whatever, it's a compilation, it's whatever, but AI will generate the content. Then you can follow up with and prompts. That's the slogan of the phrase, or the jargon. I guess jargon's a better word. And prompts, you can dive much deeper. So you do a query with a prompt, and it'll generate something, and then you can ask it a follow-up prompt, and it keeps the thread, and you can keep going down and down and down and down into the discussion as deeply as you want to go with these and prompts. It's very useful. I do that all the time. AI prompts. So the definition is it's the optimized input that elicits a response from the AI platform. So you have to be very specific. You provide a context for what you want it to output for you. You define the task that you want it to do. You provide clear instructions. You can even target an audience if you wanted to. You can tell it what not to include. So I could go back to that Chat GPT with the apple thing. I could tell it, don't include any sliced apples in this image, and generate the same image, and it should take out the sliced apple. And then again, you can refine with and prompts. This one document that I copied came out of the US Copyright Office in a document that I'll show you in just a few minutes, and it wanted to illustrate how prompts were done. So the AI prompt was written by the US Copyright Office. That's the most detailed prompt I've ever seen. If you look down through the detail, I'll talk about a couple of them. They wanted a professional photograph of a bespectacled cat in a robe reading a Sunday paper, smoking a pipe. And then it goes on and on and on and on with detail down through there. So you can see that there's a source note on there. It's part 2 copyrightability document that came out just a few months ago. Well, look at the picture. Cat looks pretty reasonable. The glass is a pipe. And look at my little arrow pointing down there. Okay, the AI platform gave that cat a human hand. So there are mistakes that everything other than that looks pretty doggone good, but I was looking for a paw there instead. And as I say, the Copyright Office published this image to illustrate a point they were trying to make. Hallucinations. By the end of tonight, you may think I'm having a lot of those as well, but the phrases actually use AI hallucinations, if you will. So what is it? It's false information that sounds plausible. Well, everything I've said so far probably sounds plausible, but you're not sure whether I'm hallucinating yet or not. What could be caused by it? Well, not enough training data. So if they don't have enough raw material in there, they're not going to come out with reliable outputs. They can make incorrect assumptions, and that has to do a lot with the algorithms and the programming and everything else built into the AI platform. This last one I get a kick out of. The AI model lacks real world understanding. I'm wondering how they're ever going to get that unless they're already walking around on the streets and we don't know it. So, yeah, how are they going to get real world understanding? Uh, I'm not sure on that one. I might take a pass on that one. But there are biases that get built into this. So if you think about biases, do you want biases in what you're finding? So what are some of these biases? Well, racial bias. So I've had to ask it to change the racial composition of outputs, for example, to make it more diverse. Gender bias. I tried to get an image drawn of a copyright detective, and I did it multiple times, and every one of them came back a male. I couldn't find a female copyright detective, if you will, from the AI platform that I was using. Age bias. Well, I want to see some graybeards in the stuff that I get. I don't want to see all these young pups that are out there. So I might tell it, make sure you have people that are exhibiting salt and pepper beards, like Paul and I. Ability biases, another type. Cultural and linguistic biases, socioeconomic, religious. So basically, any kind of bias that exists that's ever been written and digitized gets fed into these AI platforms. It's there. You've got to watch for it. Now, here's the other thing. I love this slide. So I know that this is a serious topic, but I have to lighten it up a little bit every now and then. This is a nice phrase. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Bear that in mind. That's a cardinal rule. Just because you can use AI doesn't mean you should use AI. So I wrote this prompt and I wrote it in Perplexity. Write a children's picture book about a tomato named Tommy who comes of age. And I've actually written one of these books and I want to see, okay, I haven't published it, but I want to see what AI did with it. I did this multiple times. This is a screenshot of some of the pages that Perplexity gave. And virtually every one of these AI generated children's stories, the tomato got eaten in the end. And I can just imagine that you put this out there. Children are traumatized. They wouldn't eat a vegetable the rest of their life if they were to read this kind of story. So I thought to myself, okay, what's an appropriate visual for that? So I wrote this prompt: create an image for a children's book with vegetables, including a round tomato with faces, in a salad bowl screaming in terror at the thought of being eaten. And there's the image that it generated. So anyway, I thought that was very apropos. Uh, Reads like a Grimm's fairy tale. Part two, the intersection of copyright and AI. Oh boy. So here's how copyright decisions are made. Congress will pass copyright laws, and there's a ton of them. That's why that the public domain duration chart I gave you had 5 or 6 lines because the different copyright laws change the rules in terms of how and when things are copyrighted. So Congress passes the law, the president signs it into law. Then the U.S. Copyright Office actually administers those laws. So they do it through copyright registration, which I'm in the middle of, and then they record it. They also write the policies, rulemaking, and the regulations associated with that. And then they give advice to Congress. So if they advise Congress and Congress may come back, pass a law, make an amendment or whatever, then we go into a little loop right there between the two. Well, this also happens. People sue because they don't like the decision. So the courts actually make decisions on the decisions of the U.S. Copyright Office. If it gets taken all the way to the Supreme Court, they make the final decision. Then it goes back either to Congress or it goes back to the U.S. Copyright Office. That's where we are right now with courts are ruling on decisions made by the U.S. Copyright Office. There's lots of those, and I'm going to talk about those decisions that have already been made, some that are still in the courts. This is the first document. It came out last July. It's called Copyright and Artificial Intelligence Part 1, Digital Replicas. So it addresses the use of replicating an individual's voice or appearance. And the session that I attended this past weekend, one of the presenter actually does that for a business. He has all kinds of things where he has conducted interviews with Marilyn Monroe, for example. So he found voice recordings of Marilyn Monroe. He got an AI platform to replicate her voice, and then he interviewed her and she responded with that voice. And he used another AI platform to create images of her based on photographs that are out there. So that one came out last July. And it recommends that there be a new federal law passed. So this goes back to them recommending to Congress dealing with digital replications. Now, I did a prompt, and in this case, it came back from Google, as you'll see from the note there. So I asked Google to give me the major points in this particular document. And as you can see, Google's printed this, spit this out for me. It also cites a source, which I would always go, and then it gives the AI response. So that's a good way to get a summary. I do multiple summaries to make sure I'm getting a similar kind of information from multiple sources. Now, in the case of copyright, on this slide, that screenshot that I did that's generated by AI is not copyrightable because it produced that. It only responded to my prompt. The document on the right, the cover of the part one document, actually is in the public domain because it was created by the federal government. So anything that the federal government creates with its own with its own authors or whatever, is in the public domain. So I can copy that all day long, and it's not a violation of any copyright laws. This one came out on January the 29th. My first presentation was February the 15th, and I didn't see that right away. So I had to try to figure that out. And I'm going to talk a lot about that one because that one is just in play very recently. And it has a lot of information to share in this presentation. So what it is they're giving the key policies, rules, and recommendations regarding copyrightability of AI generated materials. First part, human authorship is required. And I've got a really good example. I've been using this example way before all this came out. I've been doing presentations on copyright basics since 2010, and I've been using this particular one ever since it came out. And some of you may have seen that. Very famous monkey from, I think he's from Indonesia. Anyway, he took a selfie. So what happened in 2011, a gentleman named David Slater set up a camera out in the jungles and got it to where all that would have to happen is the monkey would click a shutter release and would take a picture. And it did that. It took a lot of pictures in 2011. Then in 2014, Slater published a book. I'll turn it around that PETA sued him on behalf of the monkey, claiming copyright for the monkey for that rather than Slater being able to copyright the book. Well, a district judge dismissed the case, ruling that copyright law does not apply to animals. Animals, machines, you getting a connection yet? We'll get there. 2016, PETA appealed to the 9th District Court. They didn't like the judge's decision. Then in 2018, the 9th Circuit ruled against PETA again, citing that animals cannot legally hold copyright. And about a third of the finding ruled against PETA for bringing the case in the first place. That's an aside. Second item, and this is a key. That's a key to my case study here. AI assistance does not negate copyright eligibility. I'm hoping to see that in my certification when I get it, that AI assistance did not prevent me from getting copyright for this presentation. To be determined. AI prompts, however, are not sufficient human control to qualify for protection. And I have two cases here that are in the courts as well right now. First one is Thayer versus Perlmutter. Perlmutter is the head of the U.S. Copyright Office. That's why you see her name. So in 2012, Thayer created an AI platform, and then he created this image using that AI platform. 6 years later, he attempted to copyright register that image. He did that in the name of the AI platform. So he claimed that the AI platform was the author for this. 2019, U.S. Copyright Office denied the application because it lacked human authorship. Prompts were not enough. 2022, he filed a complaint against it. In other words, he challenged the ruling. 2023, federal judge upheld the denial because of lack of human involvement. 2024, he appealed that. Just recently, within the last few weeks, Court of Appeals upheld the denial. So we don't know if he's going to appeal that to the Supreme Court. He may be the first person to take one of these to the U.S. Supreme Court for that. So that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be watching. And that's going to be one of the, when that happens, that'll go into the next, the slide presentation after that happens. Here's another one that's interesting. It's Allen versus Perlmutter, so it's Jason Allen. So he filed a copyright registration for this AI image, and then the Copyright Office denied it. On the left, you'll see Midjourney. Midjourney is the AI platform that he used, and you'll see what that looks like, the fuzzy image. On the right is the work that he filed a claim for. Now, if you look on again at the image to the right, you'll see more detail. So I like that image better. For that, you'll see more detail in the image, and you'll notice a note underneath it that it's in the public domain, and I'll cite the source of that public domain in just a minute. But in 2024, Allen asked the federal court to reverse the denial. He said he used 624 prompts to actually revise that image, if you will. Now, if 624 prompts are not enough, I don't know how many prompts it will take. So the whole idea of are prompts enough? And that case is still pending. So that's one that eventually will go into my slide set. Hopefully I'll live long enough to see that one settled. And I got the image from Wikimedia. Wikimedia has stirred a lot of this stuff up because it'll find something and it'll post it online, and then people, it stirs the pot and it gets a lot of this stuff in the public attention. But that's where I pulled the images from, Wikimedia. Fourth item, case-by-case evaluation of human versus AI generated. And I hit that heavily when I filed this application. I'm going to talk about two of those, but let me digress for just a second. So when I filed the application, the online form has places in there where you have to disclose the use of AI. And I submitted it. I actually went back and made an amendment because I wasn't sure if I used the right language that they wanted. In a couple of weeks, I started getting emails from the U.S. Copyright Office examiner asking me questions. And one of them was like 2 pages long. I mean, 2 typed, single spaced, tight margins, the whole 9 yards, trying to get information. So eventually he finally said, we need to talk. Okay, that kind of just made the hair on the back of my neck go up. We need to talk. So I spent approximately 2 hours talking and doing a Zoom with the examiner from the U.S. Copyright Office. And what I've eventually been able to sort out, including this weekend when I had the epiphany, he was trying to pull the information out of me in terms of how I actually used AI in there because I did not have the vocabulary to actually describe it in the amount of space that's provided on the U.S. Copyright Office submission forms. So he was trying to sort this out for himself. And eventually we got down to looking at slide by slide, and I gave him examples, just like what I'm doing for you tonight, on what I used AI for and how I used it and what the outcome was. So I didn't have the language then to tell him this was AI assisted. What I told him is I use this for fact checking, for example, and then he used the right interpretation. So I have not yet found the language written anywhere that needs to be used to submit these, but hopefully all that's coming out in the revisions to the U.S. Copyright Office submission that's in the works now. So I'm looking forward to that process. But there's 3 examples that I want to show. First one is by Kashtanova. Chris wrote this book back and filed for copyright registration in 22. And you see the book to the right-hand side. It has illustrations. It's a graphic novel. So all the illustrations inside again, were all created using AI. The cover is created using AI, and the interior graphics were created by using AI. So initially, the Copyright Office gave her a copyright registration, and then they saw all the news that came out about that, and they did a timeout do-over. So in October, just a month later, they canceled her registration because the use of AI was not clearly cited. Well, if you look in the upper left-hand corner of her book cover, it has her last name and then it has Midjourney. Well, Midjourney is the AI platform. So she gave joint credit authorship to AI, but the US Copyright Office said that's not enough. So they actually came out later with rules and clarification that says applicants have a duty to disclose the inclusion of AI generated content in a work submitted for registration. If you don't remember anything else tonight, remember that phrase. Applicants have a duty to disclose the inclusion of AI generated content in a work submitted for registration. Stop. Do not pass go, whatever. That's an obligation that we all have now, and that's one I'm trying to sort out myself. After she did that, then they awarded copyright to the text and to the overall book, but they denied copyright to the images. So what you will see with copyright registration is the registration applies to pieces of the work. So if you think about a book, if you quote someone in your book or you have a picture that's copyright protected and you get permission and you put that in your book, when you get copyright registration for your book, it actually technically does not include the copyright registration for those other items. You have the right to use that, but your copyright does not protect those. I know it's a nuance, but this is exactly the same thing. So the Copyright Office is being very consistent in how they're dealing with AI in terms of how they've dealt with other things. Here's the second one. Well, Chris learned from the first one. So in March of 23, she submitted this application to register Rose Enigma as a two-dimensional AI-generated artwork. Now you'll see this on the right-hand side, and please look underneath that. Rose Enigma, copyrighted 2024, image used with permission. I got permission from her to use those two images in this presentation because she was actually awarded a level of copyright protection. So here's how she accomplished that. She submitted a 7-page letter along with the image, outlining that, starting with the hand-drawn image that you see on the left-hand side. So the Copyright Office awarded copyright to her original hand-drawn image and to aspects of that hand-drawn image that you see on the AI-generated image on the right-hand side. Now, if you were to want to use the image on the right-hand side that has the human-looking face and lips, she actually caused those to be put in there by prompts that she wrote into the AI platform. So her copyrightability of that right-hand image only goes as far as it replicates the drawing that she did originally. So there are lots of nuances in terms of what's protected and what is not protected in a copyright. Now here's a new one. And I shared this with a couple of people a little bit late before the presentation a week or so ago, because to me it is fascinating. So this just happened at the end of January. So Copyright Office awarded a copyright for the selection, coordination, and arrangement of the components of a composite image created entirely using AI-generated materials. This is a first. This is a landmark decision that they made. This is it, a single piece of American cheese. And you'll notice on the right-hand side underneath that picture that I also got permission to use this image in this presentation and in the recording of this presentation because it is copyrighted. Now, here's how they accomplish that. The uh, the gentleman that's mentioned in the top, uh, Kent, is actually the CEO of Invoke, which is the AI platform for that. And he created this image as a test case, if you will, about the copyrightability of images created using generative AI. He did a full demonstration when he first started this on the very first keystroke of creating this image. He recorded it and he submitted a video of the full demonstration of his creation to the US Copyright Office. There is a address below that in yellow where you can actually see that full demo. Now they sped it up, but to me, it's fascinating to watch what goes on. And the best way I can describe that, if you've ever used uh, any kind of a image generation software, help me out, Paul. What's what you use? What's the one that you use?
Oh, like Dolly or Night Cafe or something.
No, the one where you're doing it, man. I just had a senior moment. I just went blank. Anyway, so if you're using a tool to paint, for example, you're drawing lines in a drawing or anything else. So this particular AI platform, if you can imagine having a painting tool that can paint liquid cheese. So if you think about everything else you're doing is a flat color in there, but if you think about a platform that can combine all the attributes of an AI platform and all the attributes of image creation software, if you will, that's what this platform does. So there was sufficient human creativity. But again, the award is for the selection, coordination, and arrangement of the components in there. So it's a restricted uh, or a limited copyright, if you will. But if I were wanting to use that image, I don't know what pieces of that is copyrightable and what is not. So I just got permission to use the entire image for that. So that was to me the safer side of being able to do this. But this is the beginning of opening things up with that particular AI platform. That's my prediction anyway. The last thing on this particular document is they are not recommending any changes in copyright law. They think the mechanism that they have already in place is sufficient, and they are modifying and they are clarifying the rules and regs, if you will, to go through. Part 3, impacts on the creative industries. So the first consideration is what's the ease of generation? And the details in the prompt greatly matter. So here's one that I created. Create a stylized black and white abstract illusion, including man playing a saxophone with a face subtly included. And that's what ChatGPT created. Spit that out. Then I changed it a little bit and I changed the word colorized and it printed that image. Okay, kind of interesting image. Not what I was looking for, but interesting images. Now, how much creativity went into writing the prompt? Not very much. You saw what I wrote is one sentence. So should I be awarded copyright based on one sentence that I wrote telling a machine to do something? How much time did it take? It took less than a minute to create that image. And what did it cost me? Zero. I used the free version of ChatGPT. What are some of the issues? It can be difficult to get what you want. On those images, I didn't get what I was looking for. I was looking for a silhouette and didn't get it. But it can be difficult to get it to produce what you're wanting it to do. There is the issue of a loss of income and credit for artists, illustrators, designers, anyone working in the creative arts. They're impacted by all of this. Um, and that's a philosophical part that I'm not going to wade into, but it's a real issue and it's a real concern. And I hear that real issue and I hear that real concern. Creativity and originality can suffer. I've heard people complaining about books that were generated by AI. It's just the same cookie cutter or whatever that's coming out, and not a lot of creativity in what's being generated. Derivatives, you've heard me say that word 2 or 3 times. AI platforms are trained using existing content. They found those apples somewhere. They found those donuts. They found something that looks like cider. They got the wood texture, the leaves. All that was found somewhere else. Aspects of the image incorporated. So they had to come up with something that looks like an apple somehow. And they started from somewhere, and that was something they took from somewhere else. And artists and illustrators can view that as infringement. So if I created something and I saw an aspect of that and something that AI spit out, I would consider that infringement. If they didn't credit me, I'd consider that plagiarism as well. So it's a double-edged sword there. Now, I ask AI about itself a lot. So I asked AI, there was an and prompt, what images did you use to create this image? And basically it was said that it was created combining patterns and elements for that it did not copy an image anywhere. I have not asked AI if it lies. I'm tempted to do that. I ask my Alexa, I closed the door so she wouldn't hear me. I ask Alexa all the time if she's an AI platform and she won't answer me. Neither will Siri. So they're denying their AI background. All right, now we're going to talk about commerce versus creativity and art. I took this picture back. I pulled these carrots out of the ground and I plugged that image into Chat GPT. And I said, this is my prompt, create an oil painting of the attachment in the style of Vincent van Gogh. Seems simple enough. Now, the US Copyright Office, he saw that slide in my slide deck and he asked me, where'd that come from? And I said, I took that photograph. He said, oh, we can copyright that in your copyright submission. So my carrot photograph is receiving a copyright. If nothing else in this whole presentation gets copyrighted, my picture of carrots may get a copyright designation. And I'm claiming the copyright at the bottom underneath the panel because I did it personally. And there's what it generated. Well, it took elements. It certainly has carrots. It has a hand. It has a sleeve. It has a stone wall. It has the grass, the garden, and everything else. Not in my wildest dreams could I paint that because I'm not a painter, first of all. But, that took about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to create. And I don't know about you, I kind of like it. But it's not copyrightable. Audio. AI, Apple announced recently that they have a digital narration tool now that's available in audiobooks. So that could represent a significant shift in how audiobook production is actually done. But people who are in that business really have to watch this. Back in December, Apple had 2 American voices. They had a male and female voice. They have also 3 other languages that this is available in. Now, what's new? New in 2025. So back in October, Penguin Random House and 10,000 other creators came out with a condemnation, and they're calling it the Do Not Train movement. And Penguin Random House now has a Do Not Train statement on its copyright pages, trying to block AI platforms from scanning and using books that they actually produce. And this is the kind of statement that might be in there. Do not train. No part of this book may be used, reproduced in any manner for the purpose of training artificial intelligence technologies or systems. So they're trying to stop it. Now, I asked a question of Perplexity that had involved a copyright statement, and I got this note back from them. I found it interesting. I apologize. I cannot rewrite or reproduce the provided sentence. So the copyright notification blocked Perplexity from actually responding to that question. I was encouraged by that when I saw that come down. So they did recognize the copyright notice. Now, this is the next thing that's coming out, and there's no cover because it's not out yet. This deals with training AI models. So it's looking at the legal implications of training AI models using copyrighted works. This is where it's really going to hit the fan, is my guess. And there is my guess, is this whole thing is going to set up precedents for lawsuits. It was supposed to have come out in the first quarter of this year. We're already past that first quarter. So the prediction is that it'll come out sometime in late 2025, dealing with this whole thing about training AI models. Now, this is what's already in the pipe. As of April the 1st, and it's not an April Fool's joke, there were 39 open AI copyright lawsuits. And they were looking at things like copyright infringement, trademark infringement, false advertising, unfair competition, rights of privacy, and DMCA violations. So there are lots of open lawsuits, and as those get resolved or work their way through the courts, they will find their way into new slide decks as I go forward. So that's all for now. I thank everyone for listening, and I look forward to the continued dialogue as we go through. My contact information and our website is down at the bottom, and I'm going to pause for just a moment. That was Allison's clue, as that's what she's going to cut the recording for a copy for me. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and I'm going to go off of share.
You mentioned, Dan, DMCA in your second to last slide. What is that?
Digital Millennial Copyright Act.
Okay.
Blah, blah, blah. It's a lot, isn't it? Well, I said DMCA. Yeah, it's one of the things that tells you how you can file claims and what's violations and what you pursue in lawsuits and all that. But not something I can keep in. I have too little RAM left up here. I can't keep it in memory, the details. But anyway, Paul, yeah, I share with this group. You're the one I shared a copy of that in Vogue. What did you think of that demo?
That was startling to me, I think.
Yeah.
And it's astounding to think that, that included a time-lapse video
Yeah.
proved anything, actually. But then the flip side is I'm trying to imagine, an examiner at the Copyright Office, having to now watch hours and hours of videos of people moving their mouse around to prove that they actually pushed the pixels to where they are. I mean, it seems like a ridiculous, death spiral.
Well, that surprised me too, because that's one thing my examiner said. He said, I don't have time to look at all 50 of your slides. Well, we end up, we actually got into the slide deck and we looked at a number because he's asking me for examples. So, we probably looked at 10 of them as examples to what's going on. Again, I didn't have the language at the time. I think I have more of the language now. I can say AI assisted, and that may be all I have to say as we go through. But anyway, yeah, I love that when he was using the painting tool. He was painting the liquid cheese on top of that head. That just blows me away.
Mhm. Well, and that was a very specialized example because it was a very specialized tool. And that I think was
Yeah,
his point also is that, okay, maybe a general purpose generative tool is not the kind of stuff that the Copyright Office is going to want to deal with. But if it's a tool that you can prove that it's a digital paintbrush,
yeah.
then that would pass muster. I mean, digital images are copyrightable, even if they're created with Photoshop or Procreate or
That
something like that. Depends
Photoshop's
what you're
what I was
looking
looking
for.
for a
Yeah.
while ago.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so that's interesting. So Barbara has her hand up. Why don't you unmute Barbara and come in with your question?
You're
Oh,
muted, Barbara.
still on mute.
Unmute.
There we
There you
go.
go.
There we go.
First of all, what a great presentation. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I had two quick questions. One is, if you can, would you give us a little prompt and then tell us the literal language you would use to follow up? Because I didn't quite understand the and thing. And then
Oh,
the second question is, how successful do you think these recent comments about excuse me, these recent comments about you may not use this material for training purposes, that are like, I have a novel coming out and they're going to print that in there. How successful do you think that's going to be?
I have no idea. Penguin Random House, they're the 900-pound gorilla, and if anybody's got a club, they have a club, and they have deep pockets.
Yeah.
So again, unfortunately, the courts are going to have to decide this stuff.
Yeah.
That's where it all ends up. It's not goodwill on the part of somebody; it's a lawsuit. The first part of your question, the simplest way, you remember the picture of the Chat GPT did of the apple cider and the
Mhm.
donuts. All right, in the bottom right-hand corner of that, there was an apple that was cut in half. And to me, it looked like a graphic. So I could write an and prompt in that same stream, and I could say, keep the same image that you have, but remove the sliced apple. And it may remove that sliced apple. Or I can tell it to I've said make something more technical before, or make it simpler, or explain it from the view of a 10-year-old. So you know you're tweaking the language, trying to tweak the image. Now you go back to the one about Alan when he submitted his uh, complaint against the Copyright Office. He said he had 624 prompts. That's how deeply he dug into that image to go from that fuzzy image to that real crisp image that's over there. And I think there are tools that allow you to look at a particular section of an image, if you will, and then try to modify that particular section as you go through. So the whole thing about prompts, that's going to be a whole art and science in and of itself. So that's part of what I'm really wanting to dig into. And there's a couple of people that are actually putting out some guidance in terms of writing prompts. But writing prompts and creating language for the copyright submission, those are two areas that I'm going to continue to dig in pretty deeply, because it's still a bit of unknown for me, and I haven't mastered it by any stretch.
You could certainly see that going very wrong, though. I think of like the early days of SEO, where people were, keyword stuffing their web pages. I could see now people prompt stuffing. If the critical number is 500, okay, I can get up to 500.
Yeah.
I'll use an AI to generate fake prompt. I mean, yeah.
It hadn't been around long enough to see all the abuses, but I mean, the things where they're reproducing people's images and voices, that created a whirlwind in the last couple of years. So we're starting to see some abuses there. But again, I'm trying to approach this from a copyrightability point of view and a copyright law.
Sure.
But,
So an interesting question that did pop into my head also in the chat here from Darren about thanking you for your presentation, but also wondering about that do not train statement that you used.
oh,
Is that itself copywritten? And I wondered
no,
about this, about copyright pages, the copyright disclaimer. Is that copyrightable?
I made that one up.
So you own the copyright to it.
Actually, it's that statement is small phrases usually cannot be copyrighted. And so that's probably, and I wouldn't claim that, because I got the idea from 12 different places and came up with that, trying to say, well, how would I write that? I actually have not seen it on Penguin's pages, or Penguin Random House's pages, but that's what I thought it might look like.
But the general idea there is something like a copyright statement.
Yeah,
If it can't be copywritten because it's short and general purpose or something like
a
that.
phrase cannot be, now something can be trademarked, but again, that's not a candidate for trademark either, which is a whole nother presentation.
Right.
I see Sean has his hand up there.
Yeah, so Sean had a great question in there. I'll read it here. He's currently using ChatGPT to chapter plan his new book. But I think what he meant here is I'm not letting it write anything for the actual chapters in the book. They're all his words. Does this mean that he doesn't have to say this was created with AI? So he's chapter planning with AI, but he's actually writing then the book himself.
Part of the problem is how you disclose this stuff. I would just call it he used AI assistance. Now, there's not room on the forum where you can say what kind of AI assistance. Now you can submit a supplement, and that's part of what I hope they fix when they fix this whole submission process. But to me, that's AI assisted, and so he's looking for ideas for that. Basically, is how I would do that. Now, when you go on Google, you're looking for ideas. The problem is I get 3 million hits and I look at the first 2 or 3 pages. The nice thing about AI is it looks at everything that exists out there and it gives you, maybe 10 sources and 1 or 2 pages. So it does all that summarization for you, and I don't have to dig through 1 million pages to try to sort that out. But the other thing is keep track of what you're doing. Now, one nice thing I found about Perplexity, I'm using Perplexity Pro, is there is a library. I can go back and look at every prompt I ever submitted under my account in Perplexity. So I can find those details, and I can go back later, just like what you're asking, Barbara, and I can drill down. I did that. I can drill down in a previous prompt and get it to do more if I decide later I want to tweak something. So that's finding that library this weekend was really an asset. Because I've been trying to figure out how do you track all of this stuff. How are we doing? People still with us? Ron had his hand waving there.
Yeah, I just have I think you can hear me. I'm trying to write a book that's educational, and as a result, I've written it all. I've asked AI to help, jazz it up a little bit and critique the writing, but that's about it. For photos or pictures, I've got three varieties. Ones that I've taken, ones which I have purchased from a source or and the third type is occasionally I have some AI generated cartoons and things like that. In each case, I identify the source. If it's an AI one, I say this is an AI generated image. When this thing, I would like the book to come out and have it be copyrighted, but I really don't care to protect the images, especially the AI ones that were generated. In fact, I would like people to use those in any teaching that they're doing or copying them. Is there any reason why I can't do it that way and still have the book copyrighted as long as I'm identifying the AI generated pictures?
All right, so think about this presentation that I just did. So, I've applied for copyright registration. It has copyrighted materials in there. It has AI generated materials and AI assisted. The issue is you have to disclose. So in your case, when you file an application for copyright, you would disclose that it contains AI generated images. Now, you don't have to disclose that you got permission to use a photograph from somebody else, or if you use public domain. And I missed the first part. I didn't quite capture the first type of image that you had. What was the first type?
I said there's three types. Ones which are my personal photographs, which are
Okay, personal.
my
All right,
grandchildren and whatnot. And then
let me
there's
say,
one which I've
let me
gotten.
say something. Yeah, let me say something about the personal. The photographer owns the rights to the photograph. If you have a copy that somebody else took, you don't own the rights to that and you can't copyright that. But if you took it yourself, now, so your book should claim the copyright on the photographs that you took because they've never been published. So you want copyright protection on your own works. So, that separates out the two types, or actually the three types. So all three of them, there's a different set of rules that apply.
As long as
But
I'm very
the book is still
clear about-
copyrightable though.
Yeah. So as long as I'm very clear about the sources of things, the book still should be copyrightable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Lauren had a question in the chat. Let me put that in because it's related to this, but it gets, I think, even more complex. So asking
Thanks.
if an indie or major publisher uses an AI voice to create the audiobook, so an AI voice generated audiobook, I imagine the audiobook cannot be given copyright. So that's the first question. And then, however, if an indie or major publisher used an authorized virtual or cloned voice, could that be given copyright?
Okay, I'm going to use this presentation as another example. So my spoken word, when I told the examiner that I'm going to be making a presentation and there's going to be a recording, then we got into the conversation about the recording of my voice. And he said, oh, that's text. So that's all that they have to say in the recorded, it's actually a multimedia work, and they record my spoken words as text. And that text is what's copyrightable. It doesn't matter whether I speak like me or if I have a clone or my neighbor is speaking like me. It's the words that are spoken that are actually the copyrightable part and not the mechanism that's producing the sound.
So in Lauren's case, either of those audiobooks would be.
Yeah, but I
The
think
book
she
would
would
be
still have to disclose it. Just for insurance. And then they can decide what to do about it. And hopefully an examiner will, again, it's case by case. So I think if you put AI in there, I think that raises a red flag and that gets an examiner in the loop. That's my guess, because the first two books were copyrighted. I never heard from anybody until I got the certificates for that. I hope that answers the question.